Hello, hello. It is so good to see you. I hope you're having an awesome week. I know I am. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and check out what happened with the items I chose for my May makeup bag. I'm really inspired to continue this as a routine series on my channel, so I hope that you look forward to more types of videos like this along with a makeup bag rotation if you're looking for additional resources on things that you might be inspired to pull out or things that you might want to pan. Because I know I typically love to watch videos of you painting things, because then I kind of get an idea of a time frame that it might take me to finish some of those very same products out of my collection. So I'm not going to go on and talk about everything because there are products that I kind of changed my mind about, so I'm going to kind of talk about those. So go on and click the card above if you want to see everything that I chose for the May makeup bag, because I really focused it around the shade Amaretto from my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. I'll also post that Get Ready With Me look as I kind of talk about the shades, because I'm also liking the idea of hitting pan in as many eyeshadows as I possibly can. I'm not going to stop doing pan that palette because that works for me. It works really well to keep me constantly thinking about my shopping versus what I'm using. It keeps me focused on using up old eyeshadow and in terms of dupes and comparable things. But especially this past month, let's kind of go on and segue into that. My focus with the May makeup bag, I really wanted to focus on the shade Amaretto from my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. And I also pulled out my Lorac Pro 2 palette with the intention of using Nectar and Rosé in particular. I was able to finally hit pan, so that makes two more shades out of this palette. I don't know why this is so blurry, but I was able to hit pan and Nectar and Rosé, and I went on and decided to work out of this pan of matte black eyeshadow as well, just to kind of keep the consistency and convenience of just limiting how many palettes I'm working out of. But it felt so good that after I finished at least hitting pan in these couple of shades, I decided to go on and finish out the month with this very smoky look using the Amaretto shade. In fact, today's version, I pulled out my Naked 3 palette to get a really mauvey transition area, because I was using Dusty Plum and Orchid from my Lorac Mega Pro palette. But since I hit pan, I thought it might be fun to go on and bust out another palette. So today I've got Limit and Nooner, the two rose matte shades from this palette, combined together in my transition area. I went over with Amaretto on top of the e.l.f. smudge pot in the shade Why Not. I'll go on and link this similar Get Ready With Me I had in the card above, as well as this description box below. Instead of going with triple fudge in my crease, I went on and mixed a candied violet type shade with Amaretto in my crease, and just a touch of cherry cordial to get this very, very smoky but kind of cranberry look. So I thought it'd be a fun way to close out the month. Let me know if you would like a Get Ready With Me to kind of go on and go through, because it's not much different than what I've done before, but I really just wanted to go on and finish off that framboise shade that I'm using instead of candied violet, and to go on and do my best to hit pan in Amaretto, because I really am getting to the point that I'm kind of sick of that shade. So the other surprising realizations that I've had about the palette since I went on and changed up my look in the middle of the month, because if you've been following my channel for a long time, I'm the type of person, it works really well for me to stick with a look and pan it until I run out of shades, and then I go through the rest of my collection and mix things up and find comparable shades. But since I'm kind of doing this hit pan on as many things as I can, it really kind of got me thinking further ahead in terms of looking beyond the blush that I choose and all that. So my focus this month was on the Clinique Cheek Pop Blush in the shade Ginger Pop Blush, but it's a little too peachy toned when you focus completely on the berry shades out of the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, because like I talked about in that video about splitting it into two halves, it really does make a difference in what you're going to pair. Because if you're pairing all of the burgundy shades from the right side of the palette here, I'll kind of give you a sneak peek too of where I am currently with the palette. But when you divide it up and work solely out of this portion of the palette. It really is a lot easier if you pair it with more berry tones and nude tones instead of trying to go with the peachy pinks. So I decided to pull out, I mean, we're talking old palette here. It's my depotted version of the Benefit Cheeky Sweet Spot palette that came out several years ago. I've been working out of the shade Rockateur because that's a shade I know works. But one thing I have to agree with you, if you panned a Benefit palette blush versus a Benefit single blush that comes in the boxed powder, the singles do operate differently than these palette blushes do, because the Rockateur, I actually finished the single of Rockateur earlier this year. I loved that blush. This one is not as pink and rosy toned as I remember. This one's actually a little bit more orange. I don't know. It's not quite the same thing as what I remember. So I have to agree with you. They're not perfectly on par with each other. And then the other thing, I've made huge progress in my MAC lipstick in Cosmo, because this is one of the ones I really have to make a decision about if I need to toss it or if I can still use it, because it is getting to where it is, why is this so blurry? But it is getting to where it is not as, it's just not, you know, a brand new lipstick. Like I get that, I understand that, but I definitely wanted to get as much use as I could. But again, it's a little too peach to wear with this kind of makeup. I'll show you. It's a My Lips but better shade, but in person it is a little bit on the peachier side. So for when I wear the smokier look on days like today, I've brought out the Wet n Wild Liquid Catsuit lipstick in the shade Rebel Rose. It's what I'm currently wearing. I mean, it's definitely a My Lips but better shade, but a little bit more on the mauvey rose side. So I figured that would be a good way. Then I get a high-end lip and a drugstore lip. I'm working on both. We're good to go. And then the other surprising thing that I really wanted to share with you is about using, if you're trying to pan an Hourglass powder, this one happens to be the Ambient lighting powder in the shade Dim Light. If you want to use it all over your face but still pan it where you're not stuck with it month after month, I cannot recommend enough this e.l.f. Flawless Face Brush. You can find this for $6 at your local Target. It is flat on both sides, and you see it comes to a point. If you lay it down in your Hourglass powder flat and then gently apply it to your face, it will help you to go through these powders relatively quickly. I have hit, well, I did have pans showing when I started using it for the past month, but as you can see, well, if it's not gonna be so blurry, but I have cleared out the bottom section of this pan. I have a thin little layer right here, and I'm starting to work on this portion of the powder. So just kind of food for thought if you are, you know, feeling like you are stifled using your powders, or you're feeling like you're not making the progress that you want to, this e.l.f. brush is an amazing tool to use with a pressed powder like this Hourglass version, because I'm getting through it a lot faster than I thought I would, which is nice because I do want to make a concentrated effort to really knock out the setting powders that I currently own. So that's about it. That's kind of where my makeup's going. I have to admit, well, if you want to see it get ready with me for this look, go on and leave me a comment below, because I feel like since we're getting to the close and Memorial Day is just this weekend, I'm not sure if I'm going to film it just yet because I've got a lot going on right now. So I don't know. And then part of me just wants to jump into my June makeup bag because I'm really itching to get some love on the shade Creme Brulee from the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, and I have tons of ideas of things that I want to do with that. And frankly, like I said, I'm just bored with the shade Amaretto, to be very honest with you. I find that incredibly fascinating how I go through periods like that with palettes, because you know, a shade like Amaretto is an easy, like everyday wearable shade. It's great, but at the same time, that makes it quite boring. And then the shades that I thought that I wasn't gonna love out of the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, I really, really appreciate. And I actually, you know, if I ever find myself stuck, because I know a couple of you were asking how I kind of got myself out of my rut with the chocolate bar palette when I really got stuck in a boring period for the last month in April. Going back to my favorite Cherry Cordial look, because it's my favorite shade in that palette, really just kind of re-energized me to have some enthusiasm for the palette again. Because one of the things, I guess I'll kind of make this comment right now too, because I have been asked this quite a lot in the past month. Would I recommend this Too Faced chocolate bar as a beginner palette? In my opinion, seeing as we are almost at the halfway point, no, I would not recommend this as a beginner palette. And hear me out, this is why I say. Looking at this palette from my experience panning it thus far, panning the shades that I have, I would find this very frustrating if I took this on as a newbie to makeup, especially being a newbie to makeup that may not be connected with all of the makeup forums and resources that we have via YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, where we can share ideas and make friends and you know, just get new advice and experiences on this palette. The other reason I say I would not recommend this as a beginner palette is because in my experience of it costing, what, $49, $50 to buy this, I find a third of the palette makes it not necessarily worth the cost. Because when you're looking at shades like Gilded Ganache, Black Forest Truffle, Candied Violets, those shades are very hard to work with because the glitter is so chunky and intense. And for somebody that is new to blending eyeshadow, that is not necessarily the best experience to start out with. Then you compound it. Those three shades are already kind of in the, you know, danger zone. But then having shades like Strawberry Bonbon that have very little pigmentation, that makes a fourth shade where you're kind of like, you know, why did I spend this much on the palette? And then going into, you know, the next couple of shades, Hot Chocolate and Hazelnut right here, these look different in the pan, but when they apply to the skin, at least in my experience, they look the exact same on the eyes. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on it. I would not recommend this as the best beginner palette. It's great for somebody who's seasoned in makeup, or even for a beginner who is very, very involved in watching YouTube videos, tutorials, get ready with me, so they're in the know on kind of what's going on, or they're in the process of building their collection. That might be a better person for this palette, but for a solid beginner palette, no, this is not necessarily what I would recommend. And the other thing I'd say too, like using Triple Fudge over here, Triple Fudge is great in your brows, but I've noticed when I use it as an eyeshadow in my outer third, if you will, it is kind of patchy on application. And then with shades like Cherry Cordial, this is my favorite shade out of this palette, but it is a very dry formula, so that makes it a little bit, you know, more involved to work with. So I don't know, I wanted to come on here and share my thoughts about that, because that is something that I have noticed, especially in the last couple of weeks of using this palette, because I am being asked so often of, would you recommend this as a beginner palette? No, there are other formulas that I think would be a lot easier to work with. Maybe say Stila, even Lorac. Lorac has its issues too, but at least those shadows do blend a little bit easier than the Too Faced formula. Too Faced I find is either kind of an acquired taste. Like you either love it or you're not a huge fan of it, because the glitter shadows can be very tough to work with. The mattes are really, really pigmented. It's hard to see progress sometimes because it does take a long time. And then the shimmers can be kind of hit and miss. So I don't know, just kind of my thoughts on it. Let me know if you enjoyed this, and if you want to continue to see this as another resource in terms of product reviews and things. So take care and have a great rest of your week as we get ready for Memorial Day and everything. So I hope that you have fun for the rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you real soon. See you later.